I just wanted to give you a quick preview of a new copy and paste structure feature. In front of you, you have a 14 layer stack up, and as with many stack ups, the materials within the build are actually symmetrical. So we have the same distance between the outside layers and the first electrical layer. So from layer 1 to layer 2 is the same distance, from layer 14 to layer 13 is the same distance. And equally, we've got similar core thicknesses and pre-preg differences in between each core in terms of thickness, and dielectric constant are very similar. If I switch over to the controlled impedance tab, you'll notice that I have 8 structures on the design at the moment. If I quickly browse through, I have 4 structures on the outer layer. First structure was a 50 ohm, second up structure was a 65 ohm single-ended, third structure is 85 ohm differential, fourth structure is 100 ohm differential, and similarly I have the same 4 target impedance structures on layer 4, which are strip lines in this case. So if I go back, refresh the structures a moment, you'll notice on the control impedance toolbar we're actually spanning over 2 rows now, because as I add new features, the toolbar needs extra space, and I've introduced a new copy and paste option. Now when we're on layer 1, remember that we have 4 structures. If I select the copy and paste structure with the current structure selected, so 1 of 8, which is a coated microstrip 50 ohm structure, I click on this option, and this looks very much like the structure layer properties. And in this particular case, rather than moving a structure up and down the stack up, I'm actually going to copy the structures and place them on another electrical layer. Glancing down the dialog, you'll notice that because this is a microstrip structure, we have a signal layer and a plane layer that we can reallocate from the current structure we've got selected. So in this particular case, I'm going to look at the upper signal layer, and if I wanted to take that particular structure to copy, which layers do I want to paste this structure to? So because it's a coated microstrip, I could paste it back to the same electrical layer, but in this case I'm going to paste it to the bottom of the stack up. So in this case, what currently is on electrical layer number 1 will be on 14, and the reference plane, layer 1 references layer 3 on the top structure. When we put it on the bottom layer of the board, it's going to, layer 14 is going to reference layer 12. So if I select layer 12 here, and now in this case, if I select apply, you'll notice that we get a rebuild option there. And that's because we've actually added a structure, we've copied and pasted the structure to the current structure collection. So on selecting rebuild, notice we now have 9 structures. And if I browse through the structures here, when we get to structure number 9, you'll notice that is the 50 ohm structure that was copied from layer 1 to layer 14 on the stack up. Now that obviously is quite useful in its own right, in that you can, if we jump back to the first structure, you can check that we have the same trace widths, trace widths and target impedance, calculated impedance, and so on, because effectively, because the build is symmetrical, the structure that's on the top of the board will behave in a very similar way to the bottom. If I actually reload the file, I'll show you some more features of this particular copy and paste option. Okay, here we go again. We're back to where we were when I started the presentation. Let's copy all the structures from layer 1 to layer 14. So looking at this current structure, select copy and paste. Again, we have the first structure brought up on the screen. Currently on layer 1, referencing the plane on layer 3. So in this case, I'm going to select layer 14 as my new signal layer for the pasted structure. Again, layer 12. But in this case, notice that we also have an option where we know the number of structures on the same signal and plane layers. So if you remember, as we browse through the structure at the beginning of the presentation, there are 4 structures on layer 1 referencing layer 3. So if I say copy all, what that will do is it will take each of those 4 structures, make a duplicate of those structures, but actually place them on the paste layers that we've allocated here. So if I hit apply now, Again, the rebuild option will flash. If I hit the rebuild and calculate, notice we now have 12 structures. So the 4 structures that were on layer 1, referencing layer 3, are now actually added on layer 14. If I browse down through, here we go. Layer 14, referencing layer 12. So this is a really quick way of adding structures on one particular electrical layer, perhaps if you've got multiple structures on the electrical layer, and then copying and pasting those same structures to other electrical layers, which I think is what our customers want in terms of the type of feedback tickets we've received in the past. If I refresh again, we were focusing on microstrip structures there, layers 1 referencing layer 3. Let's browse down through and select some structures that are on layer 4. So in this case, we have a number of structures which are on layer 4, referencing layer 3 and referencing layer 5. So in this case, what we can do is we do copy and paste again. It takes the current structure and the electrical layers that it's been assigned to. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to paste them to layer 6, referencing layer 5 and 7. So simply taking the structure that was originally on layer 4 and placing it on layer 6, so that's the signal layer. The reference plane is layer 5 and the second reference plane is layer 7. Again, I'm going to copy all 4 structures. Again, this will determine what other structures match the structure we've selected on the stack up. So we have 4 structures which currently are on electrical layer 4 referencing 3 and 5. So we're going to copy all 4 of those structures onto layer 6 referencing 5 and 7. So if I hit apply, again, what that will do is add another 4 structures. Here we go, we've got 16 now. So let's go again and let's add them to the bottom half of the stack up. So in this case, I'm going to select the structures on layer 4. So hit copy and paste. Here we go again. So in this case, I'm going to put them onto layer 9 because obviously on the bottom half of the stack up. So the signal layer is layer 9. The reference plane is 8 and the second reference plane is 10. Copy all the structures, click OK, rebuild. Now we have 20 structures. So very quickly we can add lots and lots of structures to the stack up by duplicating, copying, pasting the actual structure properties and passing them on to similar electrical layers. For completeness, let's just do the last set of structures on here. So if we look at the actual stack up, layer 10 obviously needs some structures on, layer 11 will need some structures on here. So let's copy and paste again, clicking on there. So the current signal layer for the structures we're copying from is 4. In this case, we're going to put them on to 11. The reference planes will be 10 and 12 for the pasted structure. Copy all, hit apply. And now let's rebuild all the way through. Now we have 24 structures. So this is a really fabulous way of actually increasing the number of structures on your stack up build very quickly by taking the existing structure parameters that you perhaps have goal seeked on a particular electrical layer, copying those structures and then adding them to another layer by specifying the pasted layers, signal layer and reference planes. Finally, one other thing that we can do here is you'll notice that we have layer 2 and layer 13. In this case, there's no structures that we've already added to the design because essentially they would actually be embedded microstrips. If you remember, we had coated microstrips on the particular layer that we have on layer 1 and on layer 14. So we've got 4 coated microstrips on layer 1 and 4 coated microstrips on layer 14. If we move across from here, you can obviously, looking at structure view, you can see now how many structures we've added. But again, back to the original point that I was mentioning here, layer 2 obviously would need an embedded microstrip. Well, something that's quite neat with the copy and paste feature is even though the structures aren't coated microstrips on the inner layer, what we can actually do is allocate the same target impedance and requirements for those given structures from the surface structures to the embedded microstrip structure. So in this case, we're going to put everything that's on 1 on layer 2, but actually the reference plane is still layer 3. So this structure on this particular electrical layer would still reference here, but instead of being coated microstrip, we would actually need them to be embedded microstrips. So when I do copy all, it's going to take those coated microstrips and assign them to layer 2. But when we rebuild, notice we're up to 28 structures now because we've added another 4. As we browse down through, obviously some of the impedances won't be correct because the trace widths will need to be goal seeked. But look, here is our 50 ohm structure that was originally on layer 1, still maintaining the trace widths from layer 1. But of course, we will probably need to goal seek that to achieve 50 ohms because the 20 mil trace width on layer 1, which was required for 50 ohms, is not suitable for the embedded microstrip. So now we can goal seek that particular structure. And then we've obviously need to change that to 12.6. We can browse down through. Let's see if we can do the 65 ohm structure. Goal seek that one. The 85 ohm differential. Goal seek that one. And finally the 100 ohm differential. Goal seek the trace widths on that one. So now what we've done is we've actually copy and pasted effectively the target impedance from and the structure type from the electrical layer number 1 and placed it on layer 2, even though the structure isn't a matching structure. But here what we've done is we've actually achieved those impedances by doing goal seeking after we've pasted those structures. And finally, just for completeness, what we'll do is we'll add those same structures to layer 13 on the bottom of the stack. So select copy and paste again. So items, the signal layers number 2 would need to go on to electrical layer 13. The reference plane would actually be 12 because actually we're inverting the structures. We want to copy all 4 structures from layer 2 to layer 13, hit apply, and now we should have a build with 32 structures. Here we go. So that's a quick presentation of the new copy and paste feature for structures within Speedstack. Hope you enjoyed the video, and please feel free to offer some feedback. Thanks very much then.